Hey guys, how you doing? It's Brandon here for RC Flight School. Today I'm giving you my Afterflight review on the Blade MCX2. This is their smallest coax helicopter that they sell, and this is a true beginner helicopter. That being said, I've been flying helicopters for many years, and I still very much enjoy flying these little guys. They're a lot of fun to bomb around the house, anywhere little spot, in any little room you got to fly. They're very precise, very predictable, so it kind of leads to a lot of fun. You end up kind of challenging friends, try this, land on that, and whatnot. When you got a little helicopter like this, you can take out any time. You know, you get a lot more time to fly it, and that kind of leads to, for all you beginners, more flight time, more stick time, and eventually you can upgrade to larger and larger helicopters. So that being said, I do love this thing for beginners. I highly recommend it. I got a few tips for all you beginners out there though. First step, don't try to fly this thing outside. This thing, I mean, look, it's the size of my hand. It weighs a couple ounces, super light. You don't want to take it outside. You can take it outside, obviously, there's nothing stopping you from trying to fly it, but it's going to be very unpredictable, very frustrating. The smallest amount of wind will affect this little helicopter. And even coax helicopters, if you have a larger helicopter, when I say coax, I mean helicopters that have these two sets of blades here that spin in opposite directions and no tail rotor. Coax helicopters are just very susceptible to wind when they're a fixed pitch style like this one. Wind just it's got twice the blades to grab a hold of and push, and unless you have thrust to beat the wind, you're not going to. So I don't recommend flying outside. That's my first recommendation. Second one, try to fly in a larger room to start out on. People tend to think because it's so tiny, a small room will do. And once you get more proficient at flying, you will be able to fly in a small room just fine. But objects really affect helicopters. Let me give you a quick example. Let's say I'm flying this guy close to this box here. Now because the blades are pushing air down, they're creating a low pressure center. They're sucking in air from the top and pushing it down. Anytime you get near something, helicopters tend to suck themselves into it. So if you're flying in a small room and you got objects like lamps, bookshelves, anytime you get close to it, it tends to want to pull it in. Same with flying close to a ceiling. You're getting close to one, you'll notice it's going to quickly accelerate, hit the ceiling, and that's where you get damaged parts. So fly in a large area and stay away from objects, just to start off of until you get used to that effect. You'll get used to, as you get close to things, keeping your distance and kind of giving a little bit of control to fight that tendency to suck itself into things. Also, fly on the half setting on the remote. Now, if you're buying this thing as a ready to fly, obviously I have the bind and fly model here. I'm flying it on the DX6i behind me. We have the option to turn down the rates and soften it up a little bit. But even the ready to fly model with the included remote does have a dual rate setting. You click your right stick, the right toggle stick, to get half rates. Look it up in the manual. That's a very good way to start just to get used to it. You stay on half rates for a little while and you'll get used to how the helicopter reacts. Then you can go to full rates later and really have fun with doing forward flight. But on this guy with full rates, box stock setting on the ready to fly model, it is possible to get too quick forward flight, too hard of a bank, and you can actually stall it and it'll fall out of the air. That can be frustrating because if you don't know how to fly and you're banging the sticks around, you're going to keep crashing and again just get frustrated. So start on half rates, get used to it, then go to full rates. Last piece of advice I have for beginners. I notice that beginners tend to want to use helicopters as scale as possible. And what I mean by that is when they're taking off, they're spooling up the blades really slowly and they're trying to get off the ground kind of timidly. You know, you're not used to it, and so you're trying to slowly rise off the ground. Helicopters like this, fixed pitch helicopters, and especially coax helicopters, you can't take off the ground slowly. What happens when you're spooling up the blades is you're riding a bubble of air, kind of a cushion of air. And the moment you leave the ground, it's going to want to push off that cushion. It's going to push itself away, one way or the other, forward, backward, and you'll notice that it's going to keep pushing forward or just falling over right away. So the key to getting these things off the ground, get the blades spinning so that they're rotating, not so much that it comes off the ground, and then jam the stick to get it off the ground a few feet. Then you'll get away from what we call that ground effect, that cushion of air that it's riding on. If you try to be real timid with it and slowly take off, you're just going to be drifting around and eventually it'll tip over. So that's the best advice I have for beginners. All that aside, this is still, in my opinion, the best micro helicopter for teaching yourself a full house helicopter. Once you get good at this thing, you get used to cyclic control, which is forward flight, being able to fly around, you know, figure eights, what have you. You'll be able to upgrade to a larger fixed pitch or even collective pitch helicopter in the near future. That skill set you learned from this guy will pass on to it. So, I love this helicopter. I'm sure you will too. If you have it already, take this advice, take your time with it. Once you get good at it, upgrade to a later one. You really enjoy it. Also, I'll make a quick note on durability. Still by far one of the most durable helicopters I've flown. With a side note, the key to keeping these things in one piece is knowing when to shut down the throttle. If you're flying in a room and you're heading towards something, beginner's tendency, you panic, you jam the throttle full stick to try to get away from it, but you really just put yourself into it harder or something else. And if you're running into something, a solid object, and you're at full throttle, that's when you break parts. This thing's got all the power it needs, it runs into something, it tries to stop the blades real fast, you snap apart. So the key to keeping these things in one piece is killing the throttle before you hit something. You can drop this thing 10 feet off the ground and it's just going to bounce. It's not going to break. But if the blades are spinning full throttle and it runs into something, that's when you break parts. So get used to, in practice, flying and killing the throttle. It means pulling your throttle stick all the way back so it just falls out of the air like that. It sounds bad, it looks bad, but it's way better than hitting something at full speed. I gave one of these to my little brother last year, Christmas time. He hasn't broken apart yet because I pounded that into his head. Said, if you think you're going to crash, kill the throttle. And eventually get good enough that you'll know when to avoid objects and how to land properly. So, again, that's my quick review on the MCX2. We'll do probably a few tutorial videos on this for modifying, trimming it, repairing it. These things are very easy to repair. It just takes a few times having someone walk you through it to get used to it. So we'll have videos for that for you guys as well. If you have any questions, comment below. Tell me what you think of it, if you own it. If you're thinking about buying it and you got questions, comment. I'm curious to see what you guys have to say. I'll answer all your questions as soon as I can. And hey, I do appreciate you guys watching these videos. So comment below. Thanks again.